Kia ora everyone, welcome back to our next edition of Econ Talks. Gareth, we've seen the economy is moving in an incredibly fast fashion at the moment. There's still a huge amount of activity, still a lot of money flowing through, but there's also some rising challenges for businesses to actually have enough to work with that increased levels of demand, it looks like.
Yeah, that's right. So the latest quarterly survey of business opinion from NZIR has shown, firstly, that domestic activity has picked up, and confidence around that from businesses has also lifted. And I think that just shows that the economy is back to something like normal after the uncertainty that we had last year with lockdown and the pandemic really affecting how things were going. In fact, the domestic trading numbers best in 4 years. So you have to go back to prior to the Labor government being elected in 2017 to see a more positive result, and we know that typically these surveys do tend to be a bit biased against Labor governments anyway. But like you say, that is leading to challenges for business, and probably one of the most astounding results coming through in the survey is that the question around how difficult is it for you to find staff, whether it's skilled staff or unskilled staff, the responses to that from firms is that it's the most difficult ever in terms of the history of the survey, and that's stretching back to the mid-1970s. So we're talking about almost 50 years worth of data here, and businesses are saying they've never found it tougher. So really interesting coming through there. We look at a bunch of other indicators from the survey around the labour market. Employment has been lifting and employment intentions are rising as well. Overtime has been going up. And also businesses are reporting that labour turnover has been higher. And so there's evidence there that firstly, there's probably retention problems with trying to keep staff because they're being poached by other firms. And also workers are looking around and seeing there's plenty of opportunities out there and going to chase more money potentially elsewhere as well. So real tightness coming through in that labour market and suggests that that unemployment rate is going to continue falling if this is anything to go by.
Well, and I think it really underscores, right, that businesses at the moment are generally going well. That demand for activity is still quite firm. We're seeing spending numbers that are holding up incredibly well, really, considering where we thought we might be when we looked at the numbers even last year, really. So there's very much that momentum behind it. But like you say, resourcing it, actually having the workers to do this, cope with this demand is really tight. And I think we're also starting to see it. You noted the sort of the churn rate, the turnover of workers, and how, to be honest, there's probably going to be a bit more wage pressure that's starting to come through. Businesses who do want to keep their good staff and bring in new staff, well, they're going to have to compete pretty hard by the looks of it. And you're also, of course, seeing higher job ad numbers across the country because, look, people are very much advertising for them. They can't find as many people to fill them. So there's still a lot of roles on offer. I guess so. Moving forward, there's also not only because of this, but we're seeing already with supply chain issues and similar, that businesses are reporting that their intentions of needing to increase their costs are also starting to go up. And I think that's quite a key one for the future, not only in terms of the cost of living and everything else, but let's be real, that means that an increase to the official cash rate by the Reserve Bank is becoming a much more live option almost with every passing day as we see these better numbers. I mean, what is this higher inflation going to mean? And realistically, how soon could we see the Reserve Bank lift the OCR?
Yeah, well, the Reserve Bank's mandate, one, to keep inflation under control, and we could be looking at inflation pushing up over 3% within the next couple of quarters. There's real risks around that. You mentioned, some of the factors that are feeding through into it. A lot of them supply related, but even in the labour market side of things, that's going to get worse rather than get better, given the tight indicators we've seen there. And then you couple that with the fact that demand conditions are so strong that if ever there was a time that was opportune for businesses to be passing on those cost increases, it has got to be now. So I think from the Reserve Bank's point of view, they'll be looking at that and going, well, is this inflation pressure that we've got at the moment temporary? Possibly not. Not if we don't do anything about it. And so we're bringing forward our predictions of rate rises by about a year from what we were thinking 3 months ago. That's how quickly it's moved. And the risks are still that instead of early 2022 for those interest rate rises, it could well be before the end of this year. And that's how quickly the ground is sort of shifting through there. I mean, the cost pressures that are being indicated by firms, again, we're talking about record highs in the survey that we've seen.
Well, and I think that's important to recognise how quickly we have had to adjust our expectations around the official cash rate and what the Reserve Bank might do. It was only a few months back that, bank economists were picking maybe 2024 was the first change. Now, sort of you're clambering hand over fist to try and sort of pick how quickly it might increase. Some banks now formally forecasting November 2021, a few of them even starting to murmur about August. So, those cost pressures are quite so acute. And I think what we're also seeing is that given how strong that demand is in the economy, you do ask the question of, do we need so much economic and monetary support coming into the economy with those low interest rates, or could we actually cope quite well with a still, solid economic performance, but maybe not quite as much easy and cheap cash rolling around? And I think that's just going to be something we're going to have to keep our eyes on. It's going to be a tough ask for the Reserve Bank of how they balance all of these different components. But as we move forward, inflation, cost pressures, the costs that you and I are going to pay at the shops and for different services, they're going to go up. And at some point, that means that interest rates are also going to rise. So we'll monitor that. We'll figure out our expectations of when things move and try and adjudicate what the Reserve Bank's thinking on one of our future editions of Econ Talks.